Back to Joe Bob's Last Call and Waxwork on TNT.
That was sort of a subtle ending there, huh? If I hadn't been paying close attention, I definitely would have missed the cops standing outside the operating room there. And Genevieve didn't want to call them. But see how fast they responded? I guess Michael Douglas must have called him from his cell phone while he was climbing up that ladder and disconnecting the carbon monoxide. The Great Coma, directed by Uber author Michael Crichton. Okay, I want to remind you that next week we have the humorous side of John Carpenter, the brilliant and hilarious kung fu parody Big Trouble in Little China, followed by even more chopsaki in Circle of Iron. Be here with me, Joe Bob Briggs, next week. Now let us lower our heads in respect for our next movie. Ladies and gentlemen, this is what Monstervision is all about. It's the 1988 classic about 18 evil spirits from axe murderers to zombies who just need a few dimwit high school students to help bring them back to life and do nothing less than destroy the world. You know what I'm talking about. I'm talking Waxwork. The story of an out-of-the-way wax museum in a residential neighborhood where if you get too close to the dummies, you get zapped into an alternate reality where Miles O'Keefe, John Rhys Davies, and various ghouls and sadists will rip your throat out. So let's do the drive-in totals and get it started. We have 43 dead bodies, no naked breasts, sorry. 1 live severed hand, African voodoo face painting, French S&M, fang sprouting, bat shooting, raw meat gobbling, sword fighting, strangling, stabbing, headbutting, axe to the back, death by fire, gratuitous dialogue with loud music over it, werewolf foo, vampire foo, mummy foo, zombie foo, senior citizen foo, 2 stars. Roll it. This is one of those nasty house movies. There are haunted house movies and then there are nasty house movies. This is a nasty house. That was my grandma's favorite word. Don't put that in your mouth, it's nasty. Don't watch that TV show, it's a nasty show. My grandmother, you know. Don't go out with that girl, she's nasty. This is one of those cases where I agree with Grandma on this movie, though. But let's get nasty.
Back to Joe Bob's Last Call and Waxwork on TNT.
The great David Warner, always a favorite here on Monstervision, this time playing the creepy owner of the Waxworks. His job is to skulk. Sometimes David rages with Shakespearean thunder, and sometimes he skulks like a weasel. This is one of his weaselly, skulky roles. David Warner is one of those English actors who will do anything from Chekhov to Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. In fact, he did do both of those things the same year, even. And he's been in a ton of Monstervision flicks. He was in Time After Time, where he played Jack the Ripper. Beastmaster 3, we covered both of those in Joe Bob's Summer School. He was in The Omen. He played the evil genius in Time Bandits and the drama teacher in Scream 2. He was in Titanic. He's the bad guy who slips the necklace into Leonardo DiCaprio's pockets, you know. And speaking of movies that cost more than $100, let's continue with Waxwork, in which we see just how slutty Michelle Johnson can be. Isn't she a great bitch? It takes talent to do a role where men and women think you're a bitch. Because a lot of time women will say, I cannot believe her. But the men will go, well, I don't think she's so bad, because she has killer looks, right? But with Michelle Johnson, you think, yep, she's beautiful, and she's a royal bitch. Okay, back to the movie. You know what else David Warner was in? Airport 79. The one on the Concorde, I think. Wasn't it on the Concorde? They should do another one of those. I missed those. Airport 98. The shuttle bus. Just when they thought their vacation was over, 37 tourists are taken hostage on their way back to the long-term parking lot. Starring Jack Lemmon as the bus driver and Charo as the Peruvian housewife forced to translate the terrorist demands.
Back to Joe Bob's Last Call and Waxwork on TNT.
That's my good buddy Miles O'Keefe as Count Dracula in one of the slowest scenes ever committed to film. Of course, you probably didn't realize it was Count Dracula because you can't hear the dialogue on the dang movie. Can anybody else hear anything? I can't hear diddly squat on this soundtrack. And I forgot to talk about Dana Ashbrook. He's already dead by a werewolf attack at this point, but he's the wisecracking Tony in this movie. It was his first flick, and then he did Return of the Living Dead 2, another Monstervision favorite, and his big claim to fame is Twin Peaks. And the real star of that scene we just watched was John Rhys Davies as the werewolf, and everybody knows him from the Indiana Jones flicks. Kind of made a little niche for himself in Raiders of the Lost Ark. He became like the Pavarotti of action flicks. And, of course, we remember him best here at Monstervision as the anthropologist in The Unnamable 2, and his most unforgettable role as the intrepid scientist who gets killed by a herd of rabid killer baboons in the Shadow of Kilimanjaro. Do you remember that? The killer baboons stop his pickup truck on the road and start flinging themselves at his windshield. It's a classic of horror cinema. Okay, the slutty Michelle Johnson awaits Count Dracula in her boudoir. Let's go. You know what I noticed? The last thing on Michelle Johnson's resume is a TV movie called Dallas War of the Ewings from last year. She had 4th billing after Patrick Duffy, Linda Gray, and Larry Hagman. How did I miss that? Why didn't you guys tell me that was on? What do I hire you people for? Michelle was here in Dallas. I didn't even know about it. Dang.
Back to Joe Bob's Last Call and Waxwork on TNT.
Miles O'Keefe. That was Miles O'Keefe as Count Dracula. He's known best for his work in the classic Tarzan from 1981. Remember that Tarzan, the one notorious for being the worst Tarzan movie ever made? Directed by the late John Derek and starring his wife, Bo Derek, when she was still hot from starring in 10. Do you guys know that John Derek died a couple months back? Yeah, it's sad, isn't it? Anyway, they actually hired Miles just for his body as Tarzan. He had no acting experience, and they didn't care about that because they didn't want him to actually speak. They thought any Tarzan with a speaking part might upstage Jane, which was played by Bo. And so they hired Miles, who at that point was a student at the University of the South in Sewanee, Tennessee, and they shipped him over to Sri Lanka, and then he kind of never lived it down. He followed that up with some work over in Italy. He made a series of Conan the Barbarian loincloth ripoffs called Ator the Fighting Eagle. He hates it when I mention this on the air. And then all through the 80s, he would be cast basically for being handsome. Because notice that in this movie, the whole reason Michelle Johnson gets in trouble is that she gets the hots for Miles's body. But he's really a good actor, as he's shown in a few pictures like Campus Man and the Relentless movies. But anyhow, speaking of the 80s, how about those eyebrows on Michelle Johnson? Yeah. She kind of had that Brooke Shields Blue Lagoon look going. I really wanted to see what was going on with her fiance's legs, though. I assume that's what everybody was eating with the blood juice, you know. But that's a new one on me. I've never seen that. Vampires keeping a guy alive while they feast on his shins. I guess that'd be dark meat down there, right? Okay, let's go. Roll it. Dark meat, legs and thighs. White meat, breasts. Right? You can tell a lot about a man by the color of his meat. You can tell how low the man will go, if you know what I mean, and I think you do.
Back to Joe Bob's Last Call and Waxwork on TNT.
Are they playing this movie for laughs or what? I can't tell sometimes. That mummy thing. Mummies just don't cut it anymore for me. Of course, that's assuming I knew what was going on in the movie since I can't hear the dang thing. But you know how this movie got financed? The director, Anthony Hickox, rear-ended the car of Stefan Ehrenberg, a Swedish producer, and Ehrenberg got to know Hickox that way, and he was partners with a Costa Rican tycoon, and the two of them decided that Waxwork would be their company debut. I think Anthony Hickox took serious advantage of the language barrier, don't you? But don't we have just an adorable white bread love interest thingy going on here? The two ultimate white bread romantic high schoolers of the mid-'80s, Zach Galligan of Gremlins fame, and Deborah Foreman, who debuted with Nicolas Cage in Valley Girl and then went on to make classics like My Chauffeur and, of course, Lobster Man from Mars. And I say Deborah Foreman is white bread, but I did kind of like the look she got in her eyes when the chill wind of the Marquis de Sade book ran through her lithe, lissom, and nubile bod. Back to the movie. Usually it's enough just to be nubile. but she's also lithe and lissom. You put those three together and you know what you got? Some guy's calling her up drunk at 3 in the morning. That's how beautiful she is. That's kind of the standard.
Back to Joe Bob's Last Call and Waxwork on TNT.
Okay, Patrick McNee just explained the whole plot, right? Zach Galligan's grandpa collected artifacts of 18 serial killers, but then he was killed by David Warner, although I didn't catch just how or why that happened because the soundtrack sucks. Have I mentioned that? And now David Warner is a vampire with eternal life who has a deal with the devil, and he feeds tourists to wax people. And once he gets 18 of them in the can, so to speak, the 18 most famous serial killers in history are going to rise up and take over the world and destroy it. You know what you call that in cinematic terms? Giving Patrick McNee something to do after he got all fat and jowly and the Avengers was off the air. And by the way, why is there a midget in this movie? What's the whole thing with the midget? Well, to help us out with these and other pressing matters is the ever-lovely TNT Mail Girl with our weekly installment of Joe Bob's Jailbreak. And Reno, do you know if it's midget or dwarf or little person? What do you call them?
I don't know, but I think it has something to do with the proportion of their body parts. That's it.
Do you know they have porno movies with midgets? You ever seen one of those?
No. If I want to watch a porno movie, I'm not going to watch it with a midget in
They're
it.
very suspenseful because you don't ever know what they're going to do with the midgets. Your imagination kind of runs wild. Again, it kind of makes you wonder about size, if you know what I mean, and I think you do.
Well, I really don't need to use my imagination there, Joe Bob.
I thought you'd never seen a midget porno.
I haven't.
Well, so you've seen a naked midget in real life?
Get to the letter. This is from Andy Eckert, and he is from the Arizona State Prison.
Hey, Joe Bob. Your monster movies are about the best thing going as far as television viewing is concerned. You've got it going on with the trailer and Cold Cup of Old Milwaukee, but Reno, the mail lady, and I do mean lady, has stolen my heart. She gives a new meaning to classy. If you ignore the midget thing, that might be true. Mail call here will never be the same. As it is, mail is few and far between. So each Saturday, I'm now looking forward to your mail call and lovely Reno packing the mail sack. All the inmates here, 800 of us, at Mojave Unit in Douglas, Arizona, say hey, and keep on top of the better flicks for our viewing entertainment. As for myself, I'm smitten. So do me a favor and see if you can talk Reno into sending me an autographed photo of her loveliness. And I'll park it between J. Paul Getty and Clint Eastwood. Also, would you pass this poem along to her? It's a poem for you, Reno.
Really?
Yeah, it's called Reno.
Oh, all right.
A ray of light shined for me. It almost seemed to set me free. I saw the sun through your eyes. I heard the gulls' mournful cries. I felt the breeze brush through your hair, almost as if I were there. Thank you, Reno, for this sight. Words from you are like sunlight. And then it says, thanks once again, Joe Bob, and you all take it easy. Best, your friend, Andy Eckert, 98312-1B27, Arizona State Prison, Mojave Unit, Douglas, Arizona.
Well, I am really touched. I have never had anyone write a poem for me before. Thank you.
I guess your midget boyfriend didn't write poetry, huh?
Jealous?
Of course not. All right, here's the info. Arizona State Prison Complex in Douglas, Arizona has 2,100 inmates, all men. It's low to medium security. There are 4 units in the complex: Gila, Maricopa, Mojave, and Papago, or Papago, I don't know how to say that. All units have GED programs, and they have AA, NA, self-help audio tapes for dealing with stress and anger. You know, oh, is Meatface Gallagher burning his prison bunk again? Here, Meatface, listen to this great tape. It'll help with your issues, you know. They also have classes in electronics, masonry, horticulture, and legal research for finding loopholes for their appeals. Well, thanks for writing in, Andy. We love a captive audience, and we're going back to the movie now. And I can't believe you'd go out with a midget, but you won't go out with me.
I didn't say that I went out with him.
Oh, you stayed in and ordered finger sandwiches or something. You probably polished off one of those Jack Daniels bottles together, the kind they serve on airplanes. You could save a lot of money dating a midget.
Back to Joe Bob's Last Call and Waxwork on TNT.
So there we have it, an obvious homage to Night of the Living Dead. Black and white, in the cemetery, severed hand. Kind of a combination of Night of the Living Dead and The Hand. Anyhow, the stuff they shot outdoors all looks pretty good. The cemetery, the forest, and the werewolf sequence. But the indoor stuff looks like they shot it in the high school auditorium or something. They were originally going to shoot this movie over in England, but for some reason it got moved to America. But all the technical stuff was done in England, and the Wax Museum itself was built in England. But big problemo. The wax dummies were supposed to perfectly match the faces of the actors in the movie. Well, notice how they don't match? That's because all the actors were in America, and they didn't have the time or money to fly them over to England just to get a wax face made. So the creators of the mask just used their own faces. Aren't low-budget movies great? You know how they made a cast for Patrick McNee? They videotaped an old Avengers episode, watched it a bunch of times, and sculpted McNee's head from that. Well, did you guys get off on the Marquis de Sade lashing the Virgin? They didn't really show it, but... And by the way, the director, Anthony Hickox, chose to put himself in that scene, because British guy, they're all real kinky, you know? Anthony Hickox directed Waxwork, and Waxwork 2, and Hellraiser 3, and Warlock the Armageddon, which we've had on the show, Sundown, which I like. Following in the footsteps of his father, another Monstervision regular, the director of Theater of Blood, starring Vincent Price and many other Hammer Films classics. And anyhow, that's way too much information at this hour of the morning for a movie that has no soundtrack. Did I mention that the movie is impossible to hear? Did I mention that? Okay, from here on out is full-on Wax-Foo City. This is it, the no-holds-barred, dead-body-packed conclusion of Waxwork. Roll it. And I can't believe there wasn't any nookie in the Marquis de Sade sequence.
Yeah.
Wasn't that his deal? Lash him and drool on him? Sex and pain? Pain and sex?
Yeah.
I don't mind pain with sex. I've had a lot of painful sex, and I've had a lot of sexual pain. But sex without pain, the Marquis de Sade, he thought that was boring. My variation is pain without sex. I kind of specialize in that.
Back to Joe Bob's Last Call and Waxwork on TNT.
Hand crawling across lawn. Oh my, scary, scary, scary. I don't think I'll be watching this one again anytime soon. Since I didn't hear it the first time. Do I still have swimmer's ear from the pool or something? You know, I didn't know a single line of dialogue they said in that whole movie. Let me remind you, though, that next week is John Carpenter's hilarious Big Trouble in Little China and the Kung Fu extravaganza Circle of Iron, which was reputedly written by Bruce Lee. That's it for me, Joe Bob Briggs, reminding you that I didn't fight my way to the top of the food chain to be a vegetarian. Did you guys hear the one about the guy who decides to get a facelift for his birthday? He spends $5,000 and he feels really good about the result. And on his way home, he stops at a newsstand and he buys a paper. And while he's there, he asks the sales clerk, "How old do you think I am?" And the sales clerk says, "I guess around 35. And he says, "I'm actually 47. And he feels really happy. Next day, he goes to McDonald's for lunch, and he asks the girl who takes his order the same question. And she says, "I don't know, about 29. And the guy's very proud of that, and he says, "I'm actually 47. And then the next day, while standing at the bus stop, he asks an old woman the same question. And she says, I'm 85 years old and my eyesight is going. When I was young, there was a sure way of telling a man's age. If I put my hand down your pants for 10 minutes, I'll be able to tell your exact age. Since there's nobody around, the guy thinks, what the hell? He lets her slip her hand down his pants. 10 minutes later, the old lady says, okay, I'm done. You're 47. The guy's stunned. He says, that was brilliant. How did you do that? And the old lady says, I was behind you at McDonald's. Joe Bob Briggs reminding you that the drive-in will never die. What's the difference between a G-spot and a golf ball? A man will spend hours looking for a golf ball. What's the first thing you know? Old Jed's a millionaire.